I'm back. Actually, I guess you're back, so hey, good to see ya. In my last video, we talked about what gender is, specifically in reference to being transgender or non-binary. If you're not sure what those terms mean, go check out my last video. Oh wait. Today I want to dive a little deeper into defining gender by talking about what it isn't. There are a lot of misconceptions about gender identity, and that's putting it nicely. I'm going to use the term transgender, but I'm using it as an umbrella term for trans and non-binary identities. I'll start by plucking that low-hanging fruit. Being transgender is not made up. Recall that an assigned gender is the one you were given at birth based on external genitals. Now, I should define an important term here, cisgender. Cisgender is the opposite of transgender. Broadly speaking, transgender is identifying as a gender that is not the same one that you were assigned at birth. Often this term is used to describe people who are assigned male or female who identify as female or male respectively. If you're cisgender, you still identify as the same gender you were assigned at birth. So, a quick guide. If you're wearing pink in baby photos and at your birth there was something in the room that said, "It's a girl!" then you were assigned female. If you still call yourself a woman, then you're cisgender. My point, though, is that if someone came up to you, a cisgender woman, even if you didn't dress particularly feminine, and they referred to you as a man and used masculine pronouns, you'd wonder how they couldn't clearly see that you're a woman. And that's your gender identity talking, not your physical attributes. And fellas, don't feel left out. If anyone has ever joked that you can't enjoy art or indulge in a skincare routine, or made fun of you because you can't grow a nice manly beard, or acted like you're less of a man because you can't change your own oil, people have also come after your gender identity. It's not your sex, which is biological. It's your gender, which is part of your personality and behavior. Capiche? If I may put it another way, if you consider yourself a woman and have a hysterectomy, or you were born and still are a man who's had a testicle or 2 or 3 removed, are you no longer your gender or less of your gender just because you change biological features? No. Sex does not equal gender. So gender is real, but most cisgender or cis people have never taken a moment to consider it apart from their sex. Second point. Being transgender is not a choice. Sexuality is not a choice. Sex is not a choice. Remember, intersex people exist. They're not unicorns. Do you really think we'd choose to be something that gets us mocked, hated, even attacked? Do you think we'd choose to be this in a world full of people who think it's a choice, or a mental illness, or a way to make us into lesser people? Did you choose to be cisgender, straight, a man or a woman? I've been told that it's my choice to be out and change my aesthetic and transition. Well, the options were to be myself or hide myself forever to make those around me more comfortable. That's not really much of a choice, and I don't think it's a choice you'd want to be forced into either. The only aspect of gender identity that is a choice is how we want to be ourselves. Do we want a new name, different pronouns, a new wardrobe, to medically transition? I said yes to all of these. Not everyone will, and that's okay. Anyway, if I had to guess, the lattermost point, sex not being a choice, might be the easiest to convince someone of. You can look at concrete things like a karyotype, which is somebody's chromosomes, or their physical attributes. So babies don't select what they want to have before entering the world. They're not RSVPing to a wedding. I'm not even sure how they'd get the invitation. Anyway, I would think that sexuality would be fairly straightforward as well. Either you experience attraction, which can be measured, or you don't. But then there's gender. As I said last time, it's a mental and emotional perspective. Ha! It's all in our heads. You got me, right? Well, yeah. If you want evidence of gender, take a peek inside someone's brain, preferably with their permission. I don't want to get bogged down here because I still have more to cover, but there are studies suggesting genetic components to gender. In identical twins, if one is transgender, the other one is likely to be as well. This is not seen as often in fraternal twins who only share half their genes as opposed to all of them. And if you look at a transgender person's brain, it's more similar to the gender they identify as rather than the one they were assigned. There's also some evidence that hormonal insensitivity in the womb may lead to transgender identities. For example, someone who develops as externally female may actually have weak estrogen receptors, resulting in a masculinized fetus. I will, of course, include the link in the description. I also don't want to overstate anything, lest it be used against me. Other things being transgender is not a mental illness. I love this one. So people actually cared enough to look into the mental health status of transgender people. Great! Except that they got it so wrong, and also only did it to use it against us. People often cite the diagnosis of gender identity disorder outlined in the DSM-4. The DSM is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual used by mental health professionals in the United States to diagnose patients based on standardized criteria. Other places use the ICD-11, or the International Classification of Diseases. But I think people really latched onto the disorder part and shoved it in our faces like, ha, you're broken, see? The thing is, we're on the DSM-5 now, and gender identity disorder is no longer a proper diagnosis. In my last video, I talked about how science is always evolving and sometimes refuting things we once thought were true. The DSM-5 and ICD-11 now use the terms gender dysphoria or gender incongruence, and it's no longer classified as a mental health disorder, but a condition related to sexual health. So if you cared that much about the old classification, surely you cared just as much about the new one, right? Right. What can be diagnosed now is not the identity itself, but the feelings surrounding it. Dysphoria is a term that means distress caused by attributes that don't align with your gender identity. Transgender men may feel dysphoric about having breasts or a menstrual cycle. Transgender women may feel dysphoric about facial hair. Gender incongruence is much the same idea. Your physical attributes are not in agreement with your identity. Now, if you really want to ignore mental health professionals and cling to us having a mental disorder, then I have to at least ask, would you mock someone with depression or anxiety or PTSD? Would you use these things against them or use them to invalidate them? If you would, well, I guess you're just a terrible person. If not, then why do you give us such a hard time? Being transgender is also not based on appearance. You can't guess someone's gender based off of their looks. I know. How inconvenient that we can no longer make assumptions about strangers to make our lives easier. Urgh. But you're not a trans man just because you're a woman wearing men's clothes or have a bit of facial hair or so on. You would be very offended if someone wrongly assumed your gender just because of their perception of your appearance. Being transgender is not unnatural. I know some of you will thump your Bibles and tell me that God makes no mistakes. Well, then I want you to take off your glasses because you were meant to be nearsighted, take off that brace because you were always meant to have carpal tunnel, cancel that surgery because you're always meant to hobble around from arthritis, and while you're at it, stop taking your medication for blood pressure. Also, throw out your teeth whitening kit, stop dyeing your hair, quit that diet. You're going against God's plan for you. All of these things are unnatural. So thank you once again for joining me. I really do appreciate all of you that took the time to watch this. Again, if you haven't seen my first video, go watch that one. If you have, then another video should be coming out shortly. So thanks again. So I was thinking about how we celebrate, like, it's a boy or it's a girl. Well, one day I'm going to have my friends and family come over. I'm going to tell them I have an announcement. And then I'm going to pop a balloon and green glitter's going to come out. I'm going to be like, surprise, I adopted another ferret. What do you think, Dweezil? Good idea?